How's it going, everybody, and welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jarrett, and I'm here to answer all of your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated. You can ask me anything that you like, so long as you are asking in good faith. There will be no tea or shade. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. I do not judge, I do not debate, I do not harass, and I do not bully. I know there's a lot of very popular shows out there where Democrats and Republicans yell at each other and call each other names and try to own the other one or try to win the debate. That is not what happens here. This is just good faith discussions about politics on the substance that hopefully we can all get back to a shared reality and a shared understanding of what's actually going on in the country and in the government. So throw your questions in the chat and we will get to answering them. I know politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So this is the show where you can ask all your questions, regardless of how simple or complicated they might be. And nobody's going to judge you for how simple or complicated or clearly biased your question might be. It is just going to be good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. So throw your questions in the chat and we will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. I do not judge, I do not harass, and I do not debate. I don't believe that debates are productive. Instead, I would much prefer to just have an understanding and really get into the substance of the issues. Northern Noticer says, American question mark? Yes, I am American. Shork says, should Jared Kushner and Ivanka be allowed to own the Yosemite National Park? No. No, America owns that park, and so the president's kids should not be able to take ownership of land that rightfully belongs to every American citizen. Mikhail Meme, my mom is still sad that you broke up with her. Help her. Sorry, man. There's just too many moms out there that need me. Lakota says, who do you think should have won the election? Democrats, always. Northerner Noticer says, how is it over there, ATM? I'm from Britain. It's bad. It's real bad over here. We have probably the worst government we've had since the inception, the most corrupt and incompetent government we've had since the inception. In addition to Trump being in control of the White House, we also have a feckless and what's the word I'm looking for? Complicit Congress that is being run by the Republican Party and a Supreme Court that is being run by the Republican Party and the billionaire class. Do not let what has happened over here happen in Britain. Do not vote for right wing parties that tell you that immigrants are the problem and that the only way we can solve it is cutting taxes for the wealthy. Bone Crusher says, what's your opinion on the New York City mayor publicly admitting to supporting Israel? I do not believe that Mamdani is in support of the Netanyahu government. I believe he probably said something to the effect of that he wants the citizens to be safe over there. But yeah, I doubt that Mamdani put it exactly how you phrased it. David says socialism is peak. Maybe. Henry says, who do you vote in the UK? I don't vote anybody in the UK. I am an American. Kira says, I feel for those who are informed and emotionally intelligent who have to deal with MAGA. It's rough, man. It really, really do be. Henry asks, right wing or left wing? I am left wing. Mikhail Meme says, what is Bernie Sanders' opinion on immigration? I believe he understands that immigrants are a net positive. All right, Henry, I already answered that question. Vux says, what's your take on the Romanian situation? Don't know too much about it. All right, Sasha says, let me join. No, I let people join when I want people to join. You can stick around and maybe you'll get lucky, but I am mercurial about it. Sometimes I bring people up, sometimes I don't. So it is a real risk. Benjamin's his opinion on Elon Musk. One of the worst human beings to have ever existed. I think that it's disgusting to be really proud about being a trillionaire while there are still people who are suffering and can't afford food and can't afford places to live and shit like that. People that are hoarding resources, there's something wrong with them. Rihanna says, what country are you talking about for policies? I mean, my expertise is in American politics, but you can ask about other countries if you like. Grandmaster Yoda asks, what is your... Oh, hold on a second. I got reported for harassment and bullying. That's so interesting. Can anybody tell me who I was harassing and bullying? I would love to know. Whoever reported me, can you tell me? Can you tell me what I did? Can anybody tell me what I did? Benjamin, are you the one? Because you said L take, so you like an Elon Musk fanboy, and you're upset that I said that he sucked. It's probably because you mentioned Israel. I don't know. I talk about Israel a lot on the show, and I don't get reported for it. Yeah, let's see here. I'm gonna stick with this and see what happens. We'll give it 10 minutes and then we'll see if my numbers get effed in the A. Yeah, it was probably Jared Kushner. Okay, let's see here. OG Goose says, say OG Goose. I mean, there you go, buddy. Okay, Cloud Strife says, please talk about South Africa. What would you like me to say about it? I don't know too much, but, I'll do what I can. Northern Noticer says, think Trump will get another run. No, I do not. He will probably try to stay in office until he's dead, but I do not believe that he will be successful. SGH says, I don't know much about, but that Obama guy was a good president. He sure was. Grandmaster Yoda says, what's your opinion about abortion? I am pro-choice, but even if you are pro-life, you should still vote for Democrats because Democratic policies actually decrease abortions. Republican policies don't. They actually increase the number of abortions that happen, and they make pregnancy more dangerous for women. What is up, Foggle War? Great to see you again. What would an ideal conservative political opposition look like to you as a progressive? I mean, I guess the closest thing that I would say is acceptable is like Chuck Schumer, basically. If Chuck Schumer was the most conservative member of the opposition party, I would be fine with that. Just somebody like pumping the brakes on progressives, that I find to be completely substantive. But every single Republican politician has completely betrayed any of their ethos. They have no foundation. They have no moral foundation or policy foundation. It's just tax cuts for the rich and whatever Donald Trump says. You know. Okay, Benjamin says opinion on the UK situation. I guess I would ask you what the UK situation is. What is up, Triska? Great to see you again. Cloud Strife says, are you making fun of Chuck Schumer? No, I mean, I literally believe that he should be the most right-wing person in our government. Okay, let's see here. Benjamin says the Muslims. How is it that having Muslims in your country is a situation, Benjamin? Do you not believe in separation of church and state and freedom of religion? Rihanna also asked Muslims, question mark. I'm not really sure what is up there. Bitnevo says, Jared, if JD Vance assumes power, how accurate would a scenario like the movie Civil War be? I don't think that's gonna happen at all. Okay, Rena says, happy E. Jean Carroll won in court again day. Yeah, who'd have thunk the what do you call it? The Supreme Court did a good thing every now and again. It is extremely rare, so we can take those celebrations when they happen. Rihanna says, as somebody who lives in the UK, there is no problems about Muslims. That completely tracks with my understanding of it as well. All right, Mikhail Meme asks, should we be just as critical about what's happening in Palestine, about other stuff like what's happening in Sudan, Ukraine? Hold on a second. Ukraine, women's oppression in Afghanistan. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a big difference though. Like, America is so intimately connected with, the mechanisms by which Israel is able to do war crimes and genocide in the region. Like, we are their ally. We provide them with support, and so there's a real urgency towards that issue because as Americans, we're like, this is where my tax dollars are going, and this needs to stop immediately. But obviously, everywhere that there is injustice is important. Okay, let's see here. Goran R says, do you like Andy Burnham? I know almost nothing about Andy Burnham. As I understand, he has not released a platform yet, but he seems all right to me. Shork says, why would they hold off on the birthright ruling? So two potential scenarios. Either they rule in favor of Trump and then they want to go on break so that they can be like on vacation before, so where people can't yell at them for that ruling, or they're going to vote against Donald Trump at the very end so that he can't yell at them. And also there'll be like all these think pieces about how great it was that they did that and how independent they are, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's see here. Oh, thank you, Grandmaster Yoda. I appreciate that. Okay, Rihanna says, what's your opinion for gun rights? There are a lot of countries that don't have the Second Amendment that seem to be doing just fine. I don't think that America is willing to get rid of the Second Amendment, but there are a lot of people, including gun enthusiasts, who believe that we need harsher gun laws because we have awful gun violence here in this country. The reason why I vote for the Democratic Party is not because they're going to, quote unquote, come take your guns. It's because they believe that we should try something to stop the rampant gun violence that we experience here, so that people can feel safe going to public areas like shopping malls and movie theaters, and you can feel safe sending your kids to elementary school without worrying there's going to be some sort of a mass shooter incident. And the reason why I encourage people to vote for Democrats and specifically try to unelect Republicans is because their policy towards gun violence is, what are you going to do? That's just the price that we pay for being the freest, best country in the whole world is the highest number of gun deaths, in any nation ever by a factor of like 1,000. Okay, Bitneva says, I don't know if Marco Rubio's dealer will have enough product in stock to ease his presidency loss. Oh, I'm sure he'll manage somehow. Okay, Bone Crusher, sorry I had to misinterpret Mamdani. He said he didn't support the Israeli military. Well, there we go, Bone Crusher. It's exactly what I thought was what the situation was. All right, Foggle War Productions says, I'm pro Second Amendment because I belong to an ethno-religious minority that's had to defend itself with guns. Foggle War Productions, I find that very interesting, and I'll tell you why. Because the Black Panther Party, they would do a lot of open carry to protect themselves from the police and shit like that. But that eventually escalated into actual gunfights between the Black Panthers and the police, and the Black Panthers lost. So, to a certain extent, I can see how carrying might make you feel as though you are protecting yourself, but historically, it appears as though it just puts a target on your back, and it puts public sentiment against you for having the gun. Like, think about Alex Preddy and how many people were willing to throw him under the bus just because he had a gun on him, like 5 minutes before he was shot. D. Scott and Sasha, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. So yeah, think about how easy it is to cloud an issue of things like police violence if the other person has a gun. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I vibe with that argument, my friends. Okay, yeah. Vanessa from Queens. Oh, that's so nice. Sending me all those roses and everything. All right, welcome everybody to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jarrett, and I'm here to answer your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated, be they left-wing or right-wing. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. I'm not here to debate you or roast you or make fun of you. I am just here to engage in good faith on the substance so that we can all have a better shared understanding of what's going on in our government and in our country, and we're not just repeating the same tired back and forth arguments. The right wing person says this, the left wing person says this, and then the person who had the snappiest comeback is the person that won the debate. Like, I just don't believe in that. I don't think it's productive. Rihanna says capitalism or communism. So I think that we are seeing in America a clear example of how unregulated crony capitalism is disastrous for people, the environment, etc. And it's not sustainable. We have worse income inequality now than we had during the Gilded Age, and everybody is suffering because we put the money in charge, So, but I don't believe that the answer, the solution to that is to get rid of capitalism entirely. I don't believe that it would be wrong if you wanted to, sell grilled cheese sandwiches out of a window of your apartment, if everybody loves your grilled cheese sandwiches. I think people should have the right to start businesses if they want. So where all of these things are concerned, socialism, communism, capitalism, I think that a mixed economic model is probably best. I don't believe that there's any model for a 100% communist government that I have found to be better than a democratic government. But, I dig employee-owned companies, and I dig laws that protect labor unions, and I think that it would be great if we had laws that said, like, the highest paid employee can't make more than 50 times what the lowest paid employee makes, or a law mandating that the lowest paid employees deserve a seat on the board of directors so that they can have a hand in the decisions that the company makes. All right, Ecuadorian, great to see you again. I am doing okay. Had a very lovely weekend with the missus and the little one. Mikhail Meme says, should people who work with healthcare and save people's lives have a very high salary since of what they do? Oh, yeah, obviously, of course. Okay, Bone Crusher says, how do you think the midterm elections will end? Oh, so you shouldn't ask questions to asking people to predict things, Bone Crusher, because political predictions are worthless. Like, nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. But here's what I will tell you. I know that Trump and the Republican Party are going to try to do shady shit to steal the election. I know that the billionaire class, the people that own all the social media companies, they're going to be flooding the internet with all these stories to try to make you either vote for Republicans or not vote at all. And what we need to do as individual citizens is fight against that. We need to convince enough people to vote and to vote for Democratic candidates that this election becomes too big for them to rig. That is our job. Our job is to make sure that we get these voter participation numbers up. Voter participation in America for the midterms is usually south of 50%, which I think is pathetic. Could we at least get it up to 60%? Maybe 70. I would be so fucking happy if we could get 70% voter participation in the 2026 midterms. Let's all be a part of trying to make that happen. I got a 2-month-old. I'm tired. Can I get 70% voter participation in the midterms, please? I'm fucking begging you guys. Bone Crusher. Let's see here. I already did that one. Short says, thoughts on a Harris AOC ticket. I think it's a little insulting to AOC to suggest that that is the best use of her political talents right now, is to be VP for Kamala Harris. But if Harris wins the primary and she chooses AOC to be her VP, I'm fucking voting that ticket. I'm going to encourage everybody that I know to vote for it as well. All right, TikTok guy says, what's your stance on communism as a whole? I'm down with workers owning the means of production, if that is what you are asking. Kira says, does the U.S. have postal voting? Yes, Kira, but the states are the ones that manage voting. So some states have like really well-funded and well-participated postal voting, and some states do not because they are trying to keep people from voting. There are red states that where they engage in a lot of voter suppression tactics. And that's another reason why I vote for the Democratic Party, is because Democrats try to get more people to vote and Republicans try to get less people to vote. Bone Crusher says, so like what Joe Morell is doing. I don't know who Joe Morell is, Bone Crusher. What did he do? Okay, let's see here. Benjamin says the English will be a minority in their own country in 2050. It's an invasion. Benjamin, you have to stop saying things like that. I do not let people come onto my live stream and just spread right-wing propaganda blaming immigrants for shit that is not their fault. You're trying to demonize Muslims. You're trying to make it seem like your country is being taken away from you. If you don't stop, I'm going to boot you. You are in question jail. You either ask me a question or you leave. Those are your two options. Okay, Ecuadorian says, question, if someone ran for president, let's say they are a Democrat, but they had the personality of Deadpool and his cadence on life, do you think he could be the Republican Party nominee? I don't think that Deadpool would be a Republican. And I don't think that any Republican is that charming. All right, Mikhail Meme says, according to polls in Sweden, it's being said that the left-wing Social Democrats are going to win. As of now, are you happy about that? I am. I'm happy about left-wing parties winning everywhere. All right, Shork says, do you think Mamdani could reproduce his endorsement power outside of New York? Potentially. He is very popular, but there are a lot of places in this country, a lot of purple and red areas where the idea of a democratic socialist is completely toxic. And there's a lot of very strong candidates up and down the ballot in other states, specifically because they are more moderate versions of Democrats. Now, I personally believe that his message, that Mamdani's message and his record can resonate everywhere, even deep red areas. But that's going to take a lot of work. That's going to take a lot of getting that message to those people. There are still people who believe that New York City is like a post-apocalyptic hellscape, even though it's, one of the greatest cities in the world, if not the greatest city in the world. Kira says, is an independent vote in the U.S. always a wasted vote? Yes. For the foreseeable future, it will be. Love Kevin says, everybody says we're all equal, but you do not go on holiday to Africa or India, do y'all? Lots of people do, though, Love Kevin. So, Seems like you're kind of making some dog whistle racist, uh, you know, things. Sounds like your question's kind of like dog whistle racism, Love Kevin. So maybe you want to tone that down. You're also in question jail. All right, Alfie says, what do you think of Keir Starmer's resignation? I think it was probably the move. Love Kevin says, relax. I don't relax. I block. I am already too fucking relaxed. I'm chronically chill, man. Benjamin says it's not racism, it's the truth. That is also a block because that was not a question. Congratulations. Juno says USA is literally Fallout Wasteland. By the way, I mean there are definitely aspects of America that seem very post-apocalyptic, but I think that's a little hyperbolic. Juno. Bilford Gymnut says, best version of communism, go. Workers under the means of production. Easiest question I've answered all day. Okay, let's see here. Somebody with no screen name says, what do you think about the rise of the right in Europe? I think that the same way that there's a rise, that there was right wing, sort of like a right wing rise happening in America and a bunch of other countries, it's completely inorganic. Like the billionaire class have recognized that right wing politics are really good for their pocketbook, that things like crony capitalism and destroying regulations and libertarianism makes it easier for them to steal our money and have no accountability for the things they want to do. So hypothetically, if you were a rich person who really wanted to have like a nature reserve where you hunted poor people for sports, like you could have the kind of government that would not prosecute you for doing shit like that. We need to recognize that this is happening. We need to recognize everywhere in every country in the world that the rich are doing this. They are lying to you in order to get you to vote for the politicians that make them richer and more powerful. And that is universally right-wing politicians. Okay, File Boy says, who do you think will be candidates in 2028 for Republican and Democrats? If Trump is alive, nobody else will be the candidate. And other than that, I can't tell you anything, Filet Boy, because nobody knows. Nobody has even declared that they're running on the Democratic side, so we don't know. What is up, John Abbott? Great to see you again. Bone Crusher says Joe Morell is directly combating Trump and ICE. He's trying to add more regulations to ICE. Is he in the Senate? Is he a rep? Is he in the House? I've never heard of this guy, Joe Morelle. Okay, John Abbott says Fox has done a good job of convincing people who've never been north of the 38th parallel. That Escape from New York was a documentary. That's pretty funny. Okay, Ecuadorian says, no, if a Democrat who had the personality of Deadpool ran against a Republican in the presidency, could they win? Yeah, potentially. We're entering into a new version of American politics where the sort of like properness of being a presidential candidate is maybe not as important. That could be the case just for Republicans, though. Like in America, we have this habit of lowering the bar for Republicans and constantly raising the bar for Democrats. So it's possible that that would be disqualifying just because they have a D, next to their name. Gorn says, can you give me a joke? No. Bone Crusher says he's on the House Administration Committee. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I've never heard of this person, but that sounds cool. I'm a little more in the abolish ICE as opposed to reform ICE camp, but I'm not against. I'll take regulation. I'll take reform if I can get it. Must Beezy says, I think Democrats are definitely for the rich. Well, then you are misinformed. Must Beezy. The Republican Party is for the rich. The Democratic Party is for the working class. If you would like me to expand on that, I happily will. Polska Jest says, what do you feel about the U.S. bombing innocent people? I am against it. I am against it. I believe that there are people within the Trump administration, potentially Trump himself, who should be in jail for some of the illegal military actions that they have taken. Alfie says, was Kamala Harris the best Democratic candidate in 24? Could we have gotten somebody better for that ticket? Potentially. But considering all of the other situations, the fact that she was the vice president, the fact that Joe Biden dropped out with 107 days left until the election, the fact that there wasn't enough time to hold any kind of primary in that time, we couldn't have held a primary even at the convention because states were threatening to not put our candidate's name on the ballot before the convention. And if we had nominated anybody else without any kind of election, then that would have just been seen as blatant racism and misogyny to have just like skipped over her, even though she was the vice president. Like, she was the only option at that point. As soon as Joe Biden did that disastrous debate, she was going to be the nominee, and there was nothing anybody could do about it. Must Beezy says, "Are you a communist?" No. I'm also not a capitalist. I'm also not a socialist. I believe in a mixed model. H says, "Okay, here's a question to test your politics." All right, can't wait to see it. Jessica G says, "Do you think Joe was competent before dropping off?" Ooh, that is a really good question, Jessica G. And I think it's not clear whether he was or wasn't competent. I think it's like a scale, like he was definitely diminished by age, but the people that worked with him said that he was, doing a great job. I think if you read Jake Tapper's book, it is clear that there was a lot of covering that was happening by Joe Biden's family and by his inner circle. Like, they were making it seem like he was doing a better job than he actually was. But yeah, and there's also that reporting that people were like, would you feel comfortable with Joe Biden like being in a solo negotiation with Vladimir Putin? And people in his inner circle were like, no, I would not feel comfortable with that. So yeah, he was definitely diminished. The level of diminishment is an open question, but also like, I will take the accomplishments of his administration. Give me another fucking president that's diminished like that, where we're siding with the NLRB and we are nominating people like Lena Khan to government positions, and we're passing the Inflation Reduction Act and printing a nuclear power plant's worth of solar panels every day. Like, fucking please give me some more of that incompetence, Okay, let's see here. Lue says, thoughts on Andy Burnham? I know almost nothing about him, but I wish him the best of luck. I love left-wing politicians. David Nitu says, what do you think about Germany boosts its military? I mean, America is kind of forcing Europe to invest in their own military, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea considering how unreliable of a military partner America has become. But I think that generally speaking, we want to be demilitarizing. We want fewer countries to be increasing spending on their military so that we can be moving towards world peace. Plant Daddy Mix, great to see you again, says, what are your thoughts on Mitch McConnell's absence? Clearly, he is extremely old and enfeebled. It is very likely that he is not capable of governing anymore, but his team is never going to admit that so long as the governor of Kentucky is a Democrat and they are able to just appoint Mitch McConnell's replacement. So I don't know when Mitch McConnell is up for re-election, but they will probably try to keep him. They probably try to fucking Weekend at Bernie's Mitch McConnell until he can be primaried with a younger Republican candidate. Alfie says, do you support the removal of regime in Iran? Not the war, just the ousting of the regime. I mean, if the citizens of Iran can remove their government and get a better one, I am all for that. I am not for regime change wars in the Middle East. America does not have anywhere close to a good track record with that. Vanessa from Queens, Tink, D. Scott, and Aaron, thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. All right, Michael Anthony says, Kentuckian here. McConnell replacement being voted on in November. Go Charles Booker. Wait, so did they have a primary? Is Mitch McConnell running to get re-elected? Michael Anthony, please confirm or deny. Michael Anthony says, our Republican legislators changed a couple of years ago from allowing the governor to replace him. Oh, is that true? I had recently heard that is not the case, Michael Anthony. I need to double check that. All right, Danny Jones says, Trump is running. Maybe. I don't know. Okay, Arta says, do you know any Italian politician? I don't. I only know Meloni, and I don't know too much about her except for the fact that she is way further to the right than I prefer my prime ministers to be. And as an Italian, I gotta say, it is annoying that Italians can sometimes lean into right-wing politics. It's like, come on, man. Like, we're all about having sex and eating great food and drinking great wine. Why do you also have to be fucking right-wing on top of that? Like, it's so much less fun than the French, who are also about fucking and great wine and great food. But at least they're fucking left-wing. They're a bunch of union people that'll fucking protest at the drop of the hat. I like to see a little bit more of that attitude come out of Italy. Okay, Oceanaholic says, don't know if it's true, but did you hear Trump just got rushed to the hospital? I haven't heard that. That could be misinformation. Jessica G says, what about her is right wing? I mean, I don't know anything about her politics. I just know that she is a right wing politician. I know that she's like Mussolini's granddaughter or some shit like that. So I'm pretty confident that she is right wing. I can't explain why. I just know people that I trust in international politics have always described her as being right wing. Elena says, how would you explain communism? Workers owning the means of production, employee owned companies, unions. That's how I describe communism. Fabio says, Ernan Drago. I don't know who that is. Maquette says, opinions on Restore. Terrible political party. Do not vote for them. Do not vote for Nigel Farage. Bone Crusher says, what's your take on Amos Hochstein? Don't know who that is. Dirty Yoda says, why are so many U.S. politicians lawyers and why not more normal professions? I mean, it's very expensive to run for office, so people that make a lot of money, like lawyers, can sometimes have more resources by which to do that. Also, if you are a lawyer, you are potentially rubbing elbows with powerful people, which means that you can get a group of people who have the ability to nominate you for positions. You can kind of skip a bunch of hoops. Also, I think that we generally view being a politician as a very technocratic occupation, where like we want you to be able to be in the weeds of whatever policies you're trying to write. You know, like all of our bills are written in legalese, so we're like, oh, please be able to actually read that shit and understand what it means. I do think that the government would benefit from having people who are not more people who are not lawyers. Optimus says, "Have you read Ayn Rand?" I haven't. And based on what I've heard, it doesn't really seem like something that I need to. Goes of the Gozerian says, "So, what do you think of all these neolibs disavowing the DSA and making pledges to be capitalist?" I gotta be honest, I don't care. I know that this is going to be a huge thing on the internet where people are going to talk about how the Democratic Party is rejecting the will of the voters and they fight so much harder against their own team than the Republican Party, and I find a lot of that rhetoric to be very hyperbolic. You know, if you are a progressive in the Democratic Party, you work towards your policy preferences, and if you're a centrist in the Democratic Party, you work towards your policy preferences. And because so much of this country is not the deep blue that Los Angeles and New York are, there is a lot of value to having a big spectrum of Democratic candidates. So while I do think that it is stupid for anybody, whether you're a progressive or a centrist, to eschew people who are in your own political party just because they don't align with you 100%, I think that the Democrats in disarray, infighting rhetoric is generally inaccurate and most likely part of a billionaire-funded psyop to get people to have a bad opinion of the Democratic Party. Jessica G says, what do you think of New World Order? The band? Dope as hell, if I remember correctly. Danny Jones just says, go Trump. That's a block. I don't care if you have different political opinions, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. John Selfridge, good to see you as well. I just joined, so I'm not sure if you covered this yet, but what do you think about SCO decisions that came out this morning? There have been so many decisions that have come out recently. I don't really remember the ones that came out this morning. There was the states are allowed to run their own mail ballot system, which I guess I'm happy about. I think that the strategy of the John Roberts Court is to give as many little crumbs to independent decisions as to overlook the wildly biased pro-Republican, pro-billionaire, pro-Donald Trump decisions that they also release around the same time. Like all of the immigration decisions and Monsanto, it's like, and the Second Amendment decisions, like they have all been basically just like from the Republican Party's wish list. And there's like zero, there's zero consistent judicial philosophy behind these decisions, where sometimes they care about racism, sometimes they don't think that racism exists at all. Sometimes they're originalists, and sometimes they're dealing with logistical issues, present day issues. So it's like, make it make sense. They only do what they want to do. Their ethos is we do the things that we want to do. Okay, PMI says, do you explain ideologies? I mean, I can if you like. Vanessa from Queens says, Birthright Decision comes out tomorrow. Any predictions? No predictions. Some very smart legal analysts that I follow are more worried now that they are going to rule in favor of Trump than they have been in a long time. I still find that kind of hard to believe because it is so blatantly unconstitutional, and it is so, I don't know, like it's really front of mind for a lot of people in ways that, like, the TPS decision and that Second Amendment decision coming out of Hawaii, I just don't think that people were paying close attention to it. But birthright citizenship, I think people are. And so if I had to make a prediction, and again, remember, political predictions are completely worthless, I still think they will probably adhere to the Constitution there. But, you will never lose money betting that the Supreme Court will do the wrong thing. Okay, John Abbott says, do you really not take issue with the fact that the best the corporate cohort can come up with against the Trump regime is sternly worded letters, but when a half dozen DSAs win primaries, it's war? So my issue with that, John Abbott, is what have they done besides also write a letter in regarding the DSA? Like, they've done nothing to stomp on their necks, like, if you look at the relationship between, like, Nancy Pelosi and AOC, like, Nancy Pelosi did try to kind of, like, steal some of AOC's wins so that she would not, propel herself to leadership positions immediately. And I think that was a really shitty thing for Nancy Pelosi to do. But to say that the Democratic Party fights harder against their own than they do the Republican Party, I find that to be completely inaccurate. Like, I could list probably off the top of my head a bunch of things that this Democratic Party has done to try to rein in the Republican Party and the Trump administration. There's also the issue of, where do they have power? They're doing everything that they can to stop or slow down the Trump administration. Where they actually have power is in their own caucus. Like, they are the ones who vote on who gets what committee assignments, and who gets to be, a whip, and who gets to be minority leader, a majority leader, and shit like that. So that's where they actually do have the power to actually affect, people's careers. Okay, let's see here. T-Rock says, anything? Yeah, you can ask. I might not be able to answer, but you can ask. Okay, David Nitu says, what do you think about some Jews that spit the cross? So I don't love referring to Jewish people as Jews, David. I have been cooler about that in the past, but we are living in a period of heightened anti-Semitism. So I believe we should all be referring to them as Jewish people, because Jews can seem very derogatory. And until there are 80% fewer anti-Semitic conspiracy theories bouncing around on the internet, I am going to continue feeling that way. Now, do I believe that there are Jewish people that spit on the cross? I find that to be a little unbelievable. I as far as I can tell, Jewish people don't give a shit about any other religions besides themselves. Like, they don't really try to convert people. They're not, like, holding crusades and murdering people for the Jewish faith. That's not really a thing that Jewish people do, from my experience. TLC says, are you Jewish? My dad was Jewish. My mom was not. I was not raised Jewish. I did not have a bar mitzvah. But I still do have this very beautiful Jewish face and Jewish last name. So some people lump me in with being, genetically Jewish. Okay, Council in Chaos says, Newsom has embraced the DSA. Has he? I would love to hear that. I would love it if that was true. Bone Crusher says, what's your opinion on anti-establishment? I mean, I guess it just depends. It depends. Are we talking about like, the Democratic establishment, like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries? I'm 100% for that. Are we talking about, like, not trusting America's establishments, like the Department of Justice and, the rule of law and stuff like that? I'm a little less on board with that, depending on who's in charge of those institutions. Jamie says, left or right? Left. Must Beezy says, when was the Crusades? I don't know, sometime in the 1413s? I forget. Peter says, do you know anything about Robert Fico? I do not. Council in Chaos says, this tax on assets is insane. I don't know what that means. Must Be says, bet he has no idea what the Crusades was about. Yeah, it was a bunch of Christians trying to murder people who wouldn't be Christians. Council in Chaos says, moderate Dems are scared. I mean, I don't think they should be. T-Rock says, I have a few friends who are Jewish. I'm fond of them, but Israel is another story. Listen, if you guys want to say shitty things about the Netanyahu administration and the things that they have done, I am not going to say fucking one word about that. I agree. I've been hating on Netanyahu since many of you even fucking knew where Israel was. Chili Willy, Tink, and Mia, thank you so much for helping me reach my third gift goal of the day. Now, the issue that I have is that some people hyperfixate on Israel, and then that slowly turns into anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, and that's I am not down with. But yeah, Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal. His government has been perpetuating a genocide on the people of Palestine. Like, I don't think there's any question about that. Alan says there's genocides in the Bible also. I don't understand why you're bringing that up, Alan. Okay, Chili Willy says, I became a title gifter for 10 times. Congratulations, Chili Willy. Thank you so much. Bone Crushers is like opposing strong institutions and the people that run them. I think we need oversights of strong institutions, but I think that those institutions do tend to do more good than bad, depending on which ones we're talking about, of course. T-Rock says, what do we do to remove lobbyists? That's a really good question, T-Rock. So the issue, I don't believe, is in the practice of lobbying specifically. I think it is in the nuts and bolts of lobbying, where it has just been a mechanism by which rich people can buy elections. We need massive campaign finance reform, and we need a federal election commission that actually has some teeth so that when you bribe people $1 million to register to vote as a Republican, you actually go to jail for that shit. Like, Elon Musk is guilty of electioneering, and because the Department of Justice is in the hands of the Republican Party, and because the Federal Election Commission doesn't usually have a lot of teeth behind it, he just gets to just continue doing that shit going forward for some fucking reason. So the short answer is we need to vote out the Republican Party, because the Republican Party's policy platform is to try to include more money into our politics. Because they have such an intimate relationship with the billionaire class, they make out like bandits when billionaires are allowed to spend unlimited amounts of money getting these Republican candidates elected. So the policy positions that are actually going to do that are a little bit more complicated. Off the top of my head, we can end Citizens United. We can end super PACs, corporations are not people, shit like that. We need to reverse certain other Supreme Court decisions, like Ted Cruz v. United States. There was one recently, I don't remember the name of it, where the right-wing majority said that you are allowed to give somebody a lot of money for using their political power for your benefit, so long as you give them the money afterwards, it's a tip. But if you give it to them beforehand, that's a bribe. But if they do the thing that makes you a lot of money, if they abuse their power to make you a lot of money, and then you give them some of that money, that's not a bribe, that's just a tip. And that decision needs to be overruled as well, obviously. Okay, Amor Mundi Birder. He says, such a fallacy that the right is more aligned with billionaires. Both sides are. So your sentence, Amor, is exactly the kind of vague both sidesism that I think is complete fucking nonsense. So you said such a fallacy that the right is more aligned with billionaires. Both sides are aligned with billionaires. It's true that there are some Democrats that take billionaire money, but there are a lot more Republicans that take a lot more billionaire money. If you want me to go into more detail on that, let me know. But it's not even close. Like, the Republican Party is the party of the billionaires. And if we're grading on a curve, the Democratic Party is the party of the working class. Okay, Matt Light says, wow, you are rude. Am I? I think that feels like I'm being really polite. Okay, David Nitu says, what do you think about the Romanian politics crisis in the recent years? Don't know anything about it, David, so sorry about that. Awesome Sauce was, with changing the constitution to let Mamdani run be too big of a spark to set off Republicans? Yeah, here's the thing. I'm a big fan of Mamdani. He is not the only good politician that the Democrats have. And so this fixation on him being able to run for president seems a little short-sighted, and we're kind of putting the cart before the horse here. Like, he just got started being mayor of New York. Like, he could have an incredible career, eventually being governor or senator or whatever. Let's let him actually get some more accomplishments under his belts. Let's see here. You have no right talking to people, Dan? My name's not Dan. Matt Light. Matt Light, if you don't ask a question, I'm going to boot you because it just seems like you're trying to start a fight. Alan says, a good politician. That's a good one. You funny, my guy. There are lots of good politicians. Alan, would you like me to name some? David Nitu says, what do you think about Brexit? Terrible, terrible, awful thing. Everybody in the UK who voted for that got fucking duped. That was a fucking con by the billionaire class and by authoritarian right-wing nations like Russia. Y'all got duped, and you should undo Brexit as soon as humanly possible. Mikhail Mean asks, what is AIPAC? I feel like I've answered that question for you before, Mikhail. Okay, Carbine says, the Russian bots are escaping. Accurate. Bill H says, what's your take on the Muslim Brotherhood? Don't know what that is. Alan says, sure, so I can Google all the dirt on them. LOL. Sure thing, Alan. You're in question jail. Ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Sophie asks, are you a socialist? If so, what's one thing you wish you could explain to people about socialism? I am not a socialist. I'm not a communist, but I'm also not a capitalist. I believe in a mixed model. There are a lot of countries on Earth, America included, that have in their economy capitalism, communism, and socialism. We have it already in America. We just have too much unregulated crony capitalism, and not enough socialism and communism. One thing that I wish people understand about socialism is that Venezuela is not a socialist country. They call themselves socialists, but you're not socialist if you have an upper class that gets all the rewards while the citizens are starving to death. That is not socialism. Socialism is we all pay taxes into the government, and the government uses that money to buy things that hypothetically are good for everybody. So like paved roads is socialism, public schools are socialism, the military is socialism, the fire department is socialism, etc., etc. Matt Light says, the white privilege. That's not a question, so you're out of here. Congratulations. Okay, Slug832 says, what's your thoughts on the rise of anti-Semitism and its correlation with everyone's opinion on AIPAC? So it's difficult because at the same time as there is anti-Semitism that is on the rise because of conspiracy theorists and social media algorithms and anti-Semitic politicians like Donald Trump coming into power, there are also a lot of really shitty things that organizations that are intimately associated with the Jewish people are doing. Like AIPAC is a terrible organization, a lobbying organization, to answer your question, Mikhail Meme, that is funded with American billionaire dollars that tries to influence politicians to side with Israel, even to the detriment of American citizens. And the government of Israel is doing war crimes and genocide against the people of Palestine. They're trying to start World War III, starting in the Middle East. So, yeah, that helps if you want to convince people to be anti-Semitic, that you have these very real, very, fair criticisms of organizations that are intimately associated with Jewish people. And so I always try to convince people, I always try to encourage people to not let your criticisms of AIPAC and Netanyahu turn into grander anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Okay, Mikhail Meme says, what is the IDF? That is the army, that is the military in Israel. Mr. Svovel says, glory to the Palestinian resistance. I mean, if you're talking about Hamas, then no. But I will say free Palestine. David Nitu says, what is your political ideal? Progressive democratism. So all of your far left-wing American politicians like Bernie, AOC, Mamdani, Chris Murphy, Andy Bashir, James Tallarico, like that is the politics that we should have in America. All right, period says, while Israel have committed war crimes, do you believe Israel has a right to exist? Yeah, but every country has a right to exist. America, Canada, Germany, Palestine. The issue is that the government of Israel is not respecting Palestine's right to exist, or Lebanon's right to exist, or Iran's right to exist. Cool GB says, can you please say glory to Israel? No, thank you. They've got plenty, all right? FH says, Stein, are you Jewish? I don't celebrate, but my dad was Jewish. Sophie says, opinions on the NRA studying politics, and I've always viewed it as hypocritical and corrupt. Oh, 100%. The NRA is a political institution. They don't really... Cool G says, you're antiseptic. No, I'm not. I know you meant anti-Semitic, which I'm also not, but also... What the hell does that mean? Like my body just rejects, you know, uh, sewer water? Isn't that what septic systems are? Some shit like that. Anyways, yeah, the NRA has been corrupted for political purposes. Okay, the Fixer Mike says, "Oh boy, I'm getting deluged with Tallarico messages for fundraising. I thought he's in good shape?" ? So do not ever respond to a text message saying that they are from a political campaign asking for money. This is a huge fucking problem, especially in left-wing politics, where there's all these like fundraising middlemen that basically just spam every left-wing person whose phone number they can get a hold of, and they use like rotating cell phone numbers so you can block one, but then they'll still be able to send you like 1,000 more messages. Or you can say like, remove me from your list, and then they never do. It's a fucking racket, and I think that they take something like 50% of the money that they raise for like operating costs or whatever. It's a fucking scam. Block them all, and call your representatives and tell them not to use these third party donation raising places because they're completely full of shit. Optimus says, "Can you please explain antiseptic?" I guess my positions are firmly against sewer water, I guess. FH says, "What do you think of Restore Britain Party in the UK?" Bad, terrible. Restore and Reform are bad. Do not vote for Nigel Farage. Do not vote for any politician who tries to tell you that immigrants are the cause of your problems, when billionaires are the cause of your problems. David Nitu says, "Do you think French Revolution can taught something that we maybe forgot today?" I mean, I don't believe in violence, so I'm not looking for literal guillotines, but if we're talking about figuratively taking all that money and power away from these wealth hoarders, then yes, 100% I'm down with that. Isan says, "Do you believe that hate speech is free speech?" I mean, it is. It's that there's no belief about it. The law in America protects hate speech as free speech. All right, period says, "As a European, it's crazy to hear Fox say Bernie and AOC are communists in Europe. They're moderate left." I don't think that they really are moderate left in Europe. I know that people say that. I just don't think that it's accurate. FH says, "Glory to Restore and Rupert. Holy moly, the guy who asked me if I was a Jew turns out to be not a good guy." Nate Dogg says, "What do you think about Georgism?" Don't know what that is. Mikhail Meme says, "Thoughts on Ben Shapiro? He is a liar and a con artist. I am so pleased. I'm so unbelievably pleased that he is losing money and followers because he is so staunchly and aggressively pro the Netanyahu government." David says, "Vote reform. I am not putting up with anybody who's doing that today, so you are blocked." Sophie says, "If you could introduce one law that's sovereign and can't be changed, what would it be?" No human being can be worth more than $900 million. Jerry Lull says, "Do you think Lenin was good before the revolution?" I don't know what he was like before the revolution, so I couldn't tell you. Optimus says, "Do you think religion should be banned worldwide?" No, I think people should be allowed to be religious if they want to. Moogie, somebody tried to accuse me of being anti-Semitic, but they accidentally typed that I was antiseptic, and so we were having some fun with that. All right, John Abbott says, "The problem with a mixed model is that capitalism will actively seek to strip away or take control of every aspect of socialist policy in the mix. And as soon as you get more than 2 generations removed from the problems that require the policies to be put in place, the least educated beneficiaries of those policies will support their end." John, I 100% agree that that is a thing that has happened in the past. I 100% agree that if you allow people to get a lot of money, they will use their money to try to change the laws so that they can make even more money and be even worse people with even less accountability. But I do not believe that that has to be the case going forward. I do not believe that if we had a strong FEC that was breaking up monopolies, that people would not be able to open up their own restaurants and their own businesses and stuff like that. I do believe in regulation, and I do believe in putting people in charge who are uncorruptible and will not allow that shit to happen. But yeah, we have to be vigilant. The wealthy and the powerful are always going to be there. Okay, Optimus says, "Chocolate or vanilla?" Oh, I love them both. If it's ice cream, I go chocolates. but I do love a vanilla protein powder in my morning oatmeal with blueberries. Isan says, what's your opinion on mass surveillance programs? I'm against them. Makise Kuruso says, it is immoral for patrons to pay Nigel Farage to talk about anime-girl body pillows. You got me, Makise. All right, that's 5 points for you, 1 point for me. All right. Mugia says, do you think we should get rid of the monarchy in the UK? I mean, I do, but I'm not in the UK, so I don't really, my opinion on that does not matter. Okay, Polska says, should Turkey and Morocco join the EU? Yeah, every country should, in Europe. Sophie says, why don't you identify as a socialist, just trying to understand the differences in beliefs? Sure. I think that America has a really muddy understanding of what being a socialist is, what being a democratic socialist is. The fact of the matter is, like, the Nazi Party were the National Socialists, and so, it can be really easy to demonize and undermine people who are arguing in good faith by just saying, well, you're a commie, you're a socialist, you're a Nazi, whatever. I generally believe that arguing about semantics and what label you decide to give your specific collection of political beliefs is more detrimental than not. I just shared a video of this on my TikTok of some feminist in, I think, what looked like the late 70s, early 80s, talking about how people use these phrases to kind of like chop us up, divide and conquer, that sort of thing. So I don't believe that the people that call themselves progressive Democrats should fight with the democratic socialists, should fight with the centrists, should fight with the moderate Democrats. Sorry, I just had a brain fart there. But yeah, I look around and I see the politicians that are for the policies that I am also for, and a lot of them describe themselves as democratic socialists. I guess I prefer progressive Democrat to try to incorporate other types of politics into that bucket of political beliefs, where, I don't think there's a lot of daylight between the things that I want to see legislatively and the things that Mamdani or AOC believe. But yeah, I think that I also think that when you describe yourself as a democratic socialist, it does kind of feel like you're just for taxing the rich. I don't know. Yeah, it's really is just kind of like a gut thing. It would be difficult for me to actually outline what the difference is between a progressive Democrat and a democratic socialist. But I don't know. It just feels, you know what I like about it? I like that it has Democrat in there because it kind of cements the far left into the Democratic Party, where Democratic Socialist almost feels like its own political party, but saying that you are a Democrat, but a progressive one, is kind of like reaffirming that we are part of the Democratic Party. It's a big tent, and so we have people like me, and we have people like modern, like moderates instead. All right, Dan Blackroyd, that's very funny. It's from the Champagne region of France. It's a progressive Democrat. David Nitu says Israel was implicated in the JFK assassination because JFK disagreed with their nuclear program. I don't really truck with a lot of JFK conspiracy theories. I'll just say I don't think so. Sophie says, fair enough. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Sophie. Isan says, do you support the Second Amendment? I don't, but that's not a Democratic Party-wide belief. I just look around and I see a lot of other countries that don't have a Second Amendment, and they seem to be doing really good. In fact, they seem to be doing better than America in a lot of ways. So, yeah, the Democratic Party is not going to get rid of the Second Amendment. The Democratic Party is not going to come break down your door and take your guns. But the Democratic Party believes that maybe we should try to do something to stop all this rampant gun violence that we have here in America. Whereas the Republican Party's position is that's just the price that you pay for living in the freest, greatest nation of all time. It's like sometimes your kids will get murdered when they go to elementary school. Sorry, not sorry, I guess. And that's why I say everybody should vote for Democrats and nobody should vote for Republicans. Okay, Latub Online says, why is Netanyahu bad? Because he's a war criminal. And even independent organizations within Israel have concluded such. The Fixer Mike says, Second Amendment, nothing can be done, says only nation where this happens regularly, 100%. Nate Dogg says, do democratic socialists believe in Marxism, or are they something new instead? Again, I don't think that there's any value to sort of like parsing these semantic labels, like I'm sure there's something that is included in someone's definition of Marxism that does not jibe with the democratic socialist candidates that are currently operating in American government. Maybe there are, but maybe there aren't. I don't know. I don't. Yeah. Again, Marxism has so much. There was so much mud on that name of decades of smear campaign for words like that. Brando says, "What do you think the Supreme Court will decide tomorrow on birthright citizenship?" I'm worried about it. If I had to put money on it, I would guess that they are going to uphold birthright citizenship and vote against the Trump administration. But, you never can tell with the Supreme Court. Like, I can pretty much guarantee that if the Supreme Court votes to protect birthright citizenship, then Alito and Thomas will have really, really shitty dissent opinions. But yeah, I don't know. They have gone 6-3 on so many awful decisions just this past week. It's possible. All right, Michaela Meme says, which is better, liberal or conservative? I would go liberal. Sophie says, Marxism believes in some form of proletariat control where socialism is a bit more democratic. I mean, I'm sure that is some people's definition of those things. I view them as being separate economic philosophies where socialism is the government has their version of a business that competes with private businesses. So, like, socialized healthcare would be government-run healthcare, which would compete against, private insurance. Whereas communism would be employees owning the company, which, like Bob's Red Mill or Dr. Bronner's. Shork says, do you think if any justice votes against birthright citizenship that they are by definition twisting the Constitution? Oh yeah, 100%. Absolutely. I mean, there's no unifying principle behind the shit that Alito and Thomas do. It is just, we want this, and so we are going to twist ourselves into legal knots in order to justify it. James says, right wing is the only way for Europe. That is an example of the kind of comment that gets you blocked. I don't care if you have different political opinions than me, but actually ask a question, be parts of the conversation. All right, Mickey Taker just says Stein, so that's some anti-Semitism. I'm not in the mood today, so you're blocked. Sophie says, as an American, do you think stricter Mormon religious practices like the LDS are harmful? It's interesting. I do have a personal belief that certain religious philosophies are detrimental, but that we should give people a certain amount of leeway to celebrate religion however they want. But I read this essay a little while ago about this woman who grew up in a deeply religious community, and she saved herself until marriage, and it completely ruined her sex life because she had a terrible sexual relationship with her husband. And even though her husband wanted to be there for her, she believed that her suffering to give him sex was more morally justified than saying anything about it or complaining anything about it. Like, her religion had taught her to be complacent and, a sexual object for her husband or whatever. And then when she finally was able to sort of like talk to her husband about it, like, their relationship had already been ruined by decades of her being tortured by having sex with him, And so, yeah, there's all these knock-on effects that kind of religious philosophy can have on people's noodles. But I don't know how you legislate that. I don't know how you say, like, it's wrong to lionize women who save themselves for marriage and then allow that to ruin their fucking lives later. Yeah, I don't know. Where religious liberty is concerned, there always is a delicate balance. Okay, FC27 says, do you support Trump? No. Most corrupt and incompetent president in American history. Jerry Lull says, was the Cold War a mistake? Ooh, debatable. I mean, like, the USSR was an adversarial nation. I think calling them adversarial because they called themselves communists was a little bit inaccurate and part of a right-wing smear campaign against left-wing politics. But yeah, I think an argument could be made that militarily it was the right thing to do to protect America from adversarial nations, powerful adversarial nations like Russia. But that's not really my area of expertise. I'm just kind of shooting from the hip here. Alrighty, let's see here. All right, everybody. I'm going to start wrapping things up. I'm at an hour 5. Get in your final questions. Hold on a second. Since Amy Coney Barrett voted to end protected status for Haitians, should her adopted Haitian children be allowed to remain in a hostile family environment, or should CPS step in to protect them? I think that pointing out that hypocrisy is really important, John Abbott. Like, does that mean that her children have to leave? Does that mean that her children have to go back to Haiti, the ones that she adopted? Yeah, that was a fucking disgusting decision. I hope that she's embarrassed because of that. Anyways, if you have any questions I was not able to get to on this live stream, DMs are open. Please reach out to me. I want to be a resource for you. You can also email me through my website or hit me up on my Discord channel. And there's a great community on the Discord channel of like-minded people. So join, discuss politics. Even if you disagree, it's totally fine. And there's also recommendations there for books and podcasts and civic actions that we should all take. Because we only get out of this if we all do the work, everybody. So please do the work. And if you don't know what the work is, go to the Discord or hit me up. I'll happily try to find you something to do to be part of the solution. And if you want to support the show financially, you can. You can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can be a super fan on TikTok. You can be a subscriber on Twitch. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to my Twitch channel for free. Costs you $0, helps me out a ton. You can also join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, though there's a very fun incentive at $10 if you can afford it. Blissful Perk asks, what are your thoughts on Thomas Sankara? Did some good stuff, did some bad stuff. David Nito says, who do you think was the best president of the USA? I have no idea. I am not prepared to judge every president's records. I think all the ones that we generally lionize were pretty good, like the Roosevelts, Lincoln, JFK, Washington. But in my lifetime, I've been alive for 3 Democratic presidents, Clinton, Biden, and Obama. And I think Obama was clearly the best president of the 3 of them. I think the Biden administration was arguably better than the Obama administration in terms of their accomplishments. But if you ask me, like, who was a better president, I would probably go Obama. I would definitely go Obama. Okay. Moving Target says, any thoughts on Burnham? Seems okay to me. Don't know too much about him. Let's see here. Mr. Brown says, Donald Trump had to fight Joe Biden, both at 80-year-old. Who wins? Unfortunately, I would have to give that to Donald Trump because Joe Biden is very wispy in his old age. Okay. Eson says, opinion on puberty blockers. I think if people want to take them, then they should be able to take them. Also, I think that there are some medical conditions that require taking puberty blockers. So, I guess they should be available, right? Ollie says, thoughts on Nigel Farage? Terrible. Do not vote for him. Do not vote for his party or anybody like his party. If a politician is trying to tell you that your problems are caused by immigrants, they are lying to you. Run as far and as fast as you can. Jeff says, what do you think of National Socialism? That is the official name of the political party behind the Nazis, so I do not support that. Jerry says, do you think Stalin did the Holodomor on purpose? I don't know what that is. All right, everybody. And I am going to get out of here. Thank you for watching, for sharing, for liking, for supporting in all sorts of ways, sending gifts and being subscribers and whatnot. Special thank you to my regular financial contributors. Pliff, Triska, Lauren, Grimicus, It's the Rocketeer, Rena, the Two Seans, D, Shannon, Carmine, and Patrick. If you would also like to have your name read at the end of the show, be a Twitch subscriber, a TikTok superfan, or join the Patreon. Be good to each other. You don't have to be a dick to do the work. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m., so I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel. Have a great Monday, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye. Goodbye.